Welcome to the Soulrocker Podcast, and I am your host, Vanessa Delgado. So today on this episode, I want to do a little bit of an introduction to get to tell my listeners a little bit about myself and what are my goals with the podcast. So I am 34 years old and my birthday is on May 14th, which makes me a Taurus sun. I'm a Taurus moon and a Scorpio rising. So with that being said, probably can tell that I am very big into astrology. Actually, I took an astrology course just because I really want to dig into it on a much deeper level. And I did like a you walk through it on your own time. So I have been just kind of taking it slow because it's a lot of information and I got a lot going on. So been taking it a little bit on the slower end. Let's see. I was born in Rockford, Illinois. So that's about 60 miles, give or take, west from Chicago. And I'm actually Mexican American. So both of my parents were born in Mexico. My dad was born in Nayarit. And he, I believe, came at like 16 years old. I am not quite sure. And then my mom is from Coahuila, which is up in the north end. And she came when she was about 3 years old. So I grew up with my mom's side of the family because my parents got a divorce when I was about, I think it was like 2 years old. And there's kind of a story on that, so I'll eventually be sharing more on that on a different episode because I want to tie other things into that. But essentially, I grew up with my mom and my mom's side of the family. Now, on my mom's side of the family, so I really don't know too much of my dad's side of the family because, again, I didn't grow up with them. I actually have quite a bit of family on both sides of my family here in Rockford, here in Illinois. But on my dad's side, even though I had them around nearby, I just never got a chance. And my dad's side of the family is much larger. So on my mom's side, she is one of 7 kids. And one of them has passed away now, but there's 3 females, and then I have the 4 uncles. And growing up with them was very much different, even though, I come from a Mexican background. My mom's side of the family is quite different because, everyone, 2 of my uncles were actually born here in the U.S. And then the rest of them, the oldest aunt was like 5 when she came, and then the youngest one was like 8 months old. And so everyone quickly transitioned. I mean, even my grandmother to some extent, even though my grandparents never learned how to speak English, they quickly transitioned a lot of the traditions and certain things, like they do here in America. So right away it was like we still had a lot of our Mexican traditions mixed in with a lot of the American. And so even though I grew up speaking Spanish as my primary language, as soon as I started school, I started to learn English. And my mom was actually very fluent already with her English, and so was everyone else in the family. Actually, because of the fact that my family kind of grew up more Americanized, it was quite weird because even though my grandparents didn't speak any English, my family, like my uncles and aunts, including my mom, they never were corrected when they spoke Spanish. It was just like, because when you're a kid, you make a lot of mistakes, and it was just like they were never corrected. And then my grandparents were raised with more of a improper English, and so it was like we just didn't grow up with a lot of more of the Mexican tradition. So I grew up with like a lot of hip hop mixed in with some Spanish stuff, and the food, just hanging around with going to schools where there was more American kids. And I didn't start experiencing, like when I was in grade school, was like I went to schools that were like primarily white kids. And when I was actually in the, I believe, God, I can't remember anymore, second grade, I think, I was held back because I had a teacher that was racist, and she held me and this black kid back. And there was really nothing that we could do because it was hard to prove that she was holding us back for that reason. She had seniority there at the school as a teacher, and it just didn't turn out very well. So I had that experience, but overall, most of my friends were white kids, and not until I got into middle school and high school is when I started to kind of get around more of the Latin community, like Latin kids and black kids and stuff like that. So at first it was kind of a shock for me, but at the same time I was like, oh, okay, like this is different and kind of cool, because there's a sense of me that I could relate to them, especially because there were kids that also were more like Americanized. Within the middle and high school that I went to, there was a Spanish program where there was a lot of students that really didn't speak English. So you saw a lot of those kind of kids, and I could never really relate fully to anyone because I just grew up with like a variety of things. So that was kind of a lot of my school experiences. I would say that I was never really like the most popular kid in school, but I was definitely, I think that I was somewhat known, and I had friends. I always had some kind of a friend or like little clique. I feel like I used to make friends a lot easier when I was in school than like I do now. But things were a lot different obviously back then too, to what I am now. But I was very shy, still am. But that's just who I always was, like a more reserved kid. Like I would always be that student that like went to her class on time. Like I hated being late, and I was just like really never the type of like student that was like hanging around in the locker rooms or like hanging around like in the hallways. Like I just went to one class and to the next, got what I needed to do. And I think my anxiety played a big role as to why I wanted to like quickly, get to my classes, and my like sensitivity also played a role, which I didn't know back then. But so that was kind of that situation. And at least at school, I work for a pharmaceutical packaging company. I've been there for 11 years now. My first job was in high school, and I worked at I know they depending on the area in the US, the name was different, but here which was weird because in Chicago it was, I can't even remember now, but here in Rockford it was Bergner's. So that was my first job in the mall. I've always been like a huge retail kind of girl. Like as a kid, I always imagined myself working at retail. It sounds so weird, but it's true. So when I finally got to work there, I was like in heaven. But I just obviously worked there part-time, and I worked there. I'm very terrible with my timing. I want to say maybe a year, if that. And the next job that I worked at was Hooters. So I worked at Hooters when I was like 18, 19 years old. And I only worked there for a short period of time. It was like during the summer. It was probably like 4 months or something like that. I ended up getting the job on the spot. And I was a little bit nervous to work there for many reasons, because I was like, oh God, what is my family going to say? What if other people, like, I kind of thought about that. And then, I had heard a few stories about people who work there, like just random things. I was like, God, like, what am I going to have to do? And I was not there for a long time because it wasn't my vibe. I think the biggest thing for me was I just was not that kind of a chick. I'm not that kind of chick to like have to flirt. And I felt like there was a lot of flirting kind of going on, to be honest. And I worked both like the day shift and then the evening night shift. And it just always seemed to be like kind of like the same thing no matter what. And it just felt like the customer service that I was trying to provide, which I think was a good customer service, was not enough. And I wasn't getting enough tips. I had an instance where there is a sort of a racist situation that went on. I didn't really trip over it too much, but it was definitely kind of like, whoa, because honestly, I haven't really dealt with too much of that in my life. I've had it a couple times, but never very much. And so it was kind of like a whoa, but I kind of got over it pretty quickly. So it wasn't really that was the issue. I was just not a fan of having to, in a sense, quote unquote, sell yourself, it was something that I was concerned with when I, went in. That was one of the things that I was like, should I or should I not? And sure enough, it turned out to be one of the things that I kind of figured it was going to happen. And then, it was. And I was like, well, I guess it's not for me. And after that, I basically shortly after went in and got the job that I'm working at now, which I have been at. Now, I did go to college, to just like a local community college for about 1.5 years. But at the time when I was going through a lot of personal things that really just was hard to focus. And when I first started, it was like, okay, I want to be this. And then I kind of switched over and was like, no, like, I think the confusion also of what I wanted to do was really heavy, and I just didn't know. And I didn't want to waste my time, because what I was like jumping from one thing to the next, it was really difficult for me. So I was like, I don't know. And I did not like, I just was not a huge fan of school, to be honest. So I ended up just quitting. And back in 2015, I got certified in personal training. So that's a whole nother like story, but that was something else that I did get. And basically, I've just been working a full-time job. As far as interests go, I obviously love astrology. I love fitness. I prefer bodybuilding, is what I really like. And of course, I love music. I love pretty much almost everything. I'm not a huge country fan, and I don't really like too much rock, alternative rock. A little bit I like, but it's not very, like, I don't really listen to that often. But like, I'll even listen to some classical music. I like jazz a little bit. It's just kind of like a mood sometimes that I get into, and I'll play all of that. You know, I love reggae. I mean, I love anything from hip hop to R. I actually love R&B. I'm Latina, so I love reggaeton, bachata, salsa, merengue. I also love Mexican music. Actually, when I was in high school, when my mom started to let me go out and stuff like that, she started when I was about 15. She kind of let me go out a little bit and like bailes. Back then I had a friend she had a big family, and her family also knew a lot of people. So there was like always a quinceañera that they were invited to, and she would invite me. So half the time that's where I would go to. So I love like banda music, corridos, things like that. A lot of times people wouldn't even imagine looking at me, but I do. And I'm very big into reading. I've always been into reading. I think, you know, I was raised with my mom reading to me. That was something that she always did, is, you know, she'd read to me up until I can start reading. And then I started reading. She was very encouraging with like buying me books from the Scholar. I think it was called the Scholar Book Club. And she just would always, and obviously like it was, you know, kids books and things like that. And when I got into like a teenager, I was reading a lot of like the teen books, and you know, the choices of books that I read have shifted over the years. And but I've always loved that. And I love dancing, even though I'm not like the greatest dancer, but I've always, like, again, I used to go to the bailes a lot, and that's literally what I would do, is just dance. Like, I was not about trying to sneak in liquor and trying to like sneak in like smoking and like talking to boys or whatever. Like, that was not my thing. And for me, it was like, I'm here to dance and just have a good time, vibe to the music, hang out with my friends. And that's what I like to do. I also am really, really interested in psychology, tarot, and a lot of the things that have to do with like the occult. So not so much ghost, even though, yeah, that's kind of interesting to me, but it's not something that I'm like thriving in and super intrigued by. It's more of just like spirituality. I'm a type of person that loves deep talks. I don't really like small talk at all. And I love fashion, and I love, you know, of course I like watching movies and things like that. I like to play games too. Like, that's always fun for me. Even as a kid, I used to always have like a little section where I kept like all kinds of like board games and like Operation and Uno and Guess Who and just like Candyland, you know, just all your typical popular board games. That was me, and I still kind of actually have bought some again. And then I'm also a huge foodie, which I know a lot of people would not even guess that, but I really love food, and like I am like the least picky person that you'll ever meet. Like, there's no food that I don't like at all. I just love to try new things, whether it's food related or just activities, like whatever. Like, I love to try new things. Also, kind of going back to some of my background, I shared a little bit about my parents already. I am an only child, and I think for a little while I used to love being an only child, because of course you get like the attention and you get all the toys to yourself. But probably like around 8-10 years old, like there was a sense of me that wished that I had a sibling or two, and it just never happened. Neither of my parents had even though my dad like essentially remarried and my mom had a boyfriend, they never had any kids with anyone else. It was just like the one and done. And however, I do have step siblings on my dad's side, so he got remarried to a woman who has 3 kids. So, and they're about my age, pretty close. But again, because I was really not close to my dad, I was not close to them either. I think I've connected more with them, or at least one of them, now as an adult in the recent time. But yeah, it wasn't. I had a couple cousins that I was really close to growing up, and then just, life kind of separated us. And but overall, I've just been kind of a lonely child. And moving on with the podcast, so I am a multi-passionate type of person. I don't like to be put in a box, and I love so many different topics, and I love diving deep. So with that being said, I want to really share. I've had a lot of experiences in my 34 years. And I really want to share a lot of, my experiences mixed with like actual facts, because I love to do research. And so I really want to share things that are not spoken about, or maybe they're not as mainstream. In addition, I really want to get some people on the pod from all kinds of different just outlets. And I believe that everyone has a story, everyone has something that they can share that they've overcome, and I just really want to share that, because I feel like people can learn from these things. I feel like more people can resonate and feel less alone, and get inspired to go after that dream, or go after that activity that you've been thinking about, or hobby, or whatever it is. Go after that career, go after creating a better life for yourself, and healing that dark place that lives in our head and that makes us overthink, creates anxiety, and just having unhealthy relationships, whether it's with yourself, with other people, romantically, like just all of that stuff. Sometimes we can't heal something that we don't even know that it's there, that it's been bothering us, because it's just how things are. When something is so, quote unquote normal, you don't even know that it's not normal and it's not okay. And my goal is to bring awareness to that. So really, that's my goal, is to spread as much awareness, as much inspiration as I can. And hopefully, having a little bit of everything can give somebody a sense of, give everybody an opportunity to find something that's interesting to them, or that they've been trying to, they've had questions on, or maybe you didn't have questions and you came across this podcast and you're like, what the fuck? I didn't even realize that was a thing, or that this, like, now I